the worrying figure is the long-term missing, missing for 3 months, which is about just over 2,600 people. And I believe the majority of those people have met with foul play.
I always hear people quote, and I'm not sure if they get this from America or whatever, the person needs to be missing for the first 24 hours before we can take a report. Let me say this, if any police officer is telling you that, it's bullshit.
If I can keep the memory of these people alive, so to speak, and in the public spotlight, then there's more chance that someone may see it and hear it and think, you know what, I remember something.
Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with Meni Caroutas, ex-cop, journalist, writer and host of the podcast The Missing Australia. In part 1 we talked about Meni's career in the police and the dramatic end to your career. It happens, Meni, don't worry. It's happened to a few. And you transitioned into media. But now we're going to focus on something that you're interested in and I'm very interested in. I think you could say we're passionate about missing persons. And I know in the past, and I'm speaking here in New South Wales, you might have a broader view of your research that you've been doing for the podcast. But there was a lot of criticism in the past about how missing persons were handled in the New South Wales Police. There seemed to be like an ad hoc way. It wasn't a consistency. My understanding that's been improved. What's your thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, no, it has been improved, and I've been fortunate enough to see it firsthand. What happened was, so I made the show Missing Persons Unit, where I made 4 of the 5 series of that, and the reality of that was that wasn't the way it really worked, because the production company would pay for 4 police to come along, and then I'd go through stories and I'd pick the stories I was interested in, and then 2 police would be assigned to that story. So the advantage for a family, if they allowed us to film, would be that police would be on the case. The reality isn't that. As you know, police get so busy in that. But a little over 2 years ago, a gentleman you may know, Glenn Brown, who was in the homicide squad.
I worked with him in the homicide,
Glenn was given the task of, revolutionising the missing persons unit. So they called it the Missing Persons Registry. And Glenn, he's only just left, and it's been taken over by another capable detective. But Glenn made many changes. The most important change is that he's got to put out a SOPS, a Standard Operating Procedure. So it's a manual that tells police out in the field what they need to do when someone is reported missing. And there's also instructions and procedures that have to be followed by the commander of the police station, and also members of the Missing Persons Registry constantly in contact or whatever. And also they've brought in analysts and all other seasoned investigators there. So it's come a way in leaps and bounds.
Because there used to be that disconnect, like homicide, we'd get involved in missing persons in certain circumstances, but then it wasn't done from an investigative point of view a lot of the times. And I think the fact that they've put that structure in place is a good thing. Do you know about other jurisdictions? Is similar things happened?
I'm not exactly sure, but I'm assuming, because I think that criticism in the past was something across the board throughout Australia. It was. So I believe everyone has improved the way they deal with it, and I believe that the initiatives Glenn has put in are probably going to be adopted by other forces within Australia.
Well, they're the things that can just slip through the cracks, and quite often the family of the person that's missing don't think they got the right to contact police. Police will contact us if they hear anything, and quite often in that sort of situation, nothing gets done. Like there might be an initial report, and that's the end of the investigation. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think, too, where I always hear people quote, and I'm not sure if they get this from America or whatever, the person needs to be missing for the first 24 hours before we can take a report. Let me say this, if any police officer is telling you that, it's bullshit. You can take a report, depending on the circumstances. There is no time limit when you can report someone missing. If someone went missing in suspicious circumstances, like a child walking home and didn't turn up, you don't have to wait 24 hours to report that child missing. Manny, one of the things I was shocked about and listening to your podcast and researching some of the stuff you've done is the amount of people that are reported missing across Australia each year. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, look, the figure is about 38,000 reports.
Yeah.
So not people, reports taken, because in some cases, like I know a couple of years ago there was one juvenile
Yep.
who ran away 200 times. So that's 200 reports.
Okay.
But so 38,000 reports. But thankfully, most of those people return home. I mean, for me, the worrying figure is the long-term missing, missing
Yeah.
for 3 months, which is about just over 2,600 people. So that's 2,600 Australians who have vanished into thin air.
What was that figure, sorry?
Over 2,600.
Okay, missing for 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not, I just needed to get away and clear my head type situation. That 3 months would start to be a bit concerning.
Yeah, but look, there are some people do start a new life, but it's more difficult now with cameras and that. But some people do that. Maybe a woman escaping domestic violence, someone who owes money, wants to start a new life. Other people, self-harm and their body's not found, or they have an accidental misadventure. The fourth reason, this is the one that I think relates to most long-term missing people, is they've been killed by someone, foul play.
Yeah.
And I believe the majority of those people have met with foul play.
That's interesting, and I'll just dispel another misconception that an investigation can't be started because we haven't got a body. Like in homicide, I've charged and convicted, and plenty of people have been where we've never recovered the body. So that's not something. But some of the cases you've been involved in, and the Debby Ashby case. What was the circumstances about that, and what made you interested in that particular case? I know we touched on it briefly in part one, but do you want to give us some more details about that case?
Yeah, well, Debbie was the first missing person story I reported on
Yep.
when I left the police in the early 90s. And it really stayed with me because unlike a lot of the kids that, would run away and end up at the cross, she didn't come from a terrible background, She came from a really loving family. So there was no reason for her to want to run away. The circumstance of her running away, she left her family home 2 days after she turned 16. A couple of days later, rang her sister, said she was okay. When her sister asked where she was, she hung the phone up. That's the last contact. That's back in October 1987. It's been a long, long time. She was having some trouble at school, so she was pulled out of school. But there was nothing, else that her mother Mary could tell me that would have made her want to run away. I guess my theory, if I have a theory, it would be that I think she ran away like a lot of kids do. Needed some time away or whatever, and had every intention of coming back. But she's come under come undone somewhere along the line.
That in itself is, I'm looking at it from an investigative point of view. The fact is that a lot of people that might have met with foul play have run away to start with, but they've put themselves in a position of danger, or they become vulnerable because of the way they're choosing to live their life, and that can be a misleading if you're looking at an investigation. Oh no, she told her friends she's going to run away, but then she might have put herself in a position of danger.
Yeah, we're talking about a young girl, just 2 days after she turned 16. So of course she's vulnerable.
And it is harder to disappear now with all the way that we live our lives with phones and communications. But it also should, in theory, make it easier to investigate missing persons, because it was easier to go off the grid 30 years ago than it is now.
Yeah, but look, it's still difficult. I know the police, one of the initiatives that the Missing Person Registry used was those alerts that go out on phones now. And I interviewed Glenn Brown when he first took over, and then I interviewed him 2 years down the track to see what had happened. And he told me two great stories, and the stories were two people who were seeking to self-harm, and they traced a phone of one of the people through triangulation, and they found it in the car at a cliff-top car park.
Yeah.
And the police looked down into the ocean over the cliff, and the lady had jumped in the ocean. And the police jumped in the ocean, right, and
Yeah.
and saved her.
Okay.
And another one was someone had seen this woman. I think went into a hotel or something. Police went in there, gained entry into the room, and she'd taken an overdose. They were able to save her. So technology, is helping.
And that's a good initiative. People might have. I've certainly had quite a few alerts that come over your phone, and you're wondering who this is, and the description of someone that's missing in your local area. It seems to make sense.
Oh well, it does. I mean, and the thing is, police are not magicians. Police don't have a crystal ball to locate people or to crack cases. I mean, police really rely on the public to help, and that's why I guess the catch cry for the podcast is someone somewhere knows something.
Yeah.
And it's all about me making an appeal to the listeners. If you know something, pick up the phone. Tell the police what you know so that they can, hopefully bring some closure to a family.
And if there's any doubt, and I've often said this when I was in the police and since I've left the police, if someone's got a doubt of some information, pass it on to police. It might be that little missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle that the police are looking for. Another thing in preparing for the podcast, and I could see it firsthand, but a figure of, for everyone that disappears, it impacts on 12 lives. I thought that was an interesting figure that comes out. But when you think about it, someone disappears, most people have that many people in their life, and it is going to impact on a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, apart from, family members and friends, workmates, all that sort of stuff. So, when you multiply it by the 2,600, I mean, you're looking at over 30,000 Australians impacted by someone going missing. So, I guess that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it's not a small thing. I think it's a big social issue.
Yeah. The impact it has on families, and I want to. I'll start off with referring to one family that I think you dealt with them through the media, and we're talking about it the other day. And it was just yesterday that I got a text from Mark Levison that it was 6 years ago to the day that his son Matthew was found in the national park, and I was there with Mark and Faye. The story about that, and people would have heard me talk about it on the podcast, is that when Maddie disappeared, their son, they didn't know what happened to him. A person was charged with murder and acquitted. They didn't have a body. They didn't have any answers. The person that was acquitted of his murder, he was never convicted of any crime relating to it. It went to coronial inquest. So the coroner found in the Matthew Levison case that the person responsible for burying Matt's body wasn't responsible for his death. And the findings came down, it was most likely as a result of a drug overdose. Now, I've got to say, Mark and Faye have differing opinions, and I'm close to them, and I respect their opinions. But it was a difficult one, and they really did have to make that choice between, do we want justice in the form of the courts acknowledging something's happened, or do we want to find Matt's body back? And they chose Matt's body. Mark and Faye used to go down to a national park and randomly dig in locations looking for Matt's body. They believed he might be down there. If people wonder the type of impact the missing person has on a family, that I think demonstrates it. And that's just one example. I've got a few examples, but have you got similar examples with families that you've met in your research on missing persons and the type of impact it has on them? Yeah,
look, it has a big impact. And I think the story that you mentioned, right, I think that clearly shows the desperation that families have just to have their young one returned. Yeah. Because, I mean, they had to make a tough decision.
Yeah.
As far as the person who, allegedly or is suspected of killing their son, he would get a indemnity.
Yep.
If he told them where Maddie's remains were. Now that's a big decision for parents to make. It's like, well, the man who we believe may have killed our son, he gets away. We get our son. If he doesn't tell us, we'll never get Maddie back.
Yeah.
And I think that really illustrates just how tough it is for parents.
Yes.
And look, we spoke earlier. I mean, people, they don't leave. They live in the same house. They have the same phone number. They don't get rid of their loved one's clothes, even though if it's a child, 20 years pass, the clothes aren't going to fit them,
Yeah.
but they hold on to them. There was a story I did in Darwin about a young girl that went missing. Well, she was 16, I think 16 or 17, Ronya Lavoni, and the bedroom hadn't changed. She'd been missing 20 years. It's the same. The mother hadn't changed anything.
Yeah, and I want people, you say that, I want people just to sit back and comprehend what we're talking here. So a room in the house you don't change for 20 years in the hope that...
The bedroom, the child's bedroom, yeah. It's the same. And the bed's made up, the clothes are still there, the teddy bears or whatever are still on the bed, the study table, the same prints, everything, nothing's changed.
Yeah, it's the impact. I saw it with the Barraville murders. Colleen Walker, a 16-year-old girl, one of the three children up at Barraville that was murdered. Her body's never been recovered, and so we're talking over 30 years ago. And her mother and family would quite often ring me and still in contact that they received some information from someone that the body might be there. Could you search this area? And they'd go out and search if the police couldn't search it. And this happened over the years. And the family was traumatised by the fact that they couldn't find out. They can't bury their loved one. Circumstances in this one particularly dictate that she has been murdered, but they haven't got Colleen's body back and the impact it has. And time again, you're making me think back through my homicide career, like Ian Draper. Ian Draper disappeared and his car was found. He was never been in trouble, living a good life. He witnessed a violent attack and gave evidence and at a court matter. And 5 years later, he disappears. And his car was dumped, wiped down and dumped out the front of the Bringelly clubhouse of the Rebels OMCG. And I got to know Janet quite well, and the pain that she was going through, just trying to find out what happened to her son, and it sticks with you. And people think homicide must be the worst thing, but there is something worse when you don't know, when you don't know what's happened to your loved one.
Oh, mate, it is, and I think what I would say to people, because you could never, I say to the people I talk to, I don't sit there and say, "Oh, look, yeah, I know what you're going through." No. There's no way I know. I can never imagine what you're going through, right? But just to give people an idea, I think just imagine you've got someone, a loved one who's missing. Just imagine you're watching the news or you open the paper and there's a story about human remains or a body being found, right?
Yeah.
Every family member of a missing person, right, they stop and they hold their breath for that moment, right? And they all think, is that my loved one? Right, and they wait. They'll call police or they'll wait for a call. I mean, that's a terrible way to exist.
Yeah, it brings it back time and time again. And a case that people, and I mentioned it, William Tyrrell case, a 3-year-old child disappearing. The impact that has had on the family, the biological family and the foster family, and I think society in general just want answers for that. And people still live in hope that, he might turn up, there might be some explanation for it. As sadly you've seen it in very rare occasions these things happen, but that uncertainty and not knowing, it's an ongoing hell.
Yeah, look, I describe it as an emotional roller coaster, and I've asked people, and I always get the same answer. I've said to people many times, people say time heals. Does it? And they all say no.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it doesn't matter how many years pass. You can't overcome the loss of a loved one, but to not know where they are, and even if all the evidence points to the fact they're no longer alive, there's still a flicker of hope. You need to know.
There might be, but they just might. And if you don't know definitively, you can't dispel that. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a horrible way to, as I said earlier, just to exist. You don't know, are they alive? Are they dead? Are they being hurt? Are they out in the cold? What's going on? And as I said, every time there's a report, you freeze and hold your breath.
Have you thought, because you've got your cop brain, but you're also your journalistic brain, when you're looking at these cases, have you seen opportunities missed in the early stages where the reports have been made?
Look, I think historical ones.
Yep.
I think and it's always the same issue
Yep.
is that they made a report or people didn't make a report, quickly enough, and police took it. And in many cases, especially if it was say young teenagers, and I remember hearing police say to people up at the cross, oh look, she's just run away, she'll be back.
Yeah.
And you would know, I mean, much better than I do, Gary, how crucial it is that first 24 to 48 hours where, you can find witnesses, evidence, all the rest of it. As time goes by, witnesses forget things. They may pass away. Evidence gets destroyed. So, yeah, I mean, in the historical ones, obviously there were, but I guess they didn't know any better. There was no procedures.
I say this, it's always, with the benefit of hindsight, we can be the world's greatest investigators. It's what availability you have to resources and all sorts of things at the time. But I've always, or not always, but one thing that the William Tyrrell taught me, I was looking at this situation. You got a 3-year-old child that's disappeared, so a little boy lost scenario, which quite rightly that was the focus of the police that attended there the first up to find him, and hopefully, because 99% of these disappearances, if they're attended to right at the start, there is a happy result that the missing person or missing child is found. But I also think it's crucial that an investigative side of missing persons thing is commenced straight away. So it runs concurrently, runs parallel with searching for the little boy lost, but also investigating, treating it as something suspicious until it can be disproved otherwise. What's your thoughts on that approach? Do you see merit in that?
Look, there is merit, most definitely. But obviously you can't do it for every missing person case. But when it's someone like William, a little boy who's vulnerable, or it could be an elderly person with dementia, most definitely.
Jump on
it. Yeah, I think, look, I think I most certainly now in New South Wales, with the Missing Persons Registry and what Glenn Brown's brought in, I think they're doing that. There's a different way of looking at it, and they have things that they look for. Whether they're markers or whatever that will heighten the risk and the severity of a case. Yeah. So I think they're doing that in New South Wales at the moment. But yeah, 100%, it needs to be done.
I think the Cleo Smith case, to me, that looked like good police work, and I was watching from afar, but watching with a great deal of curiosity how it was being handled. And it was pretty well apparent to me right from the start they're looking at it as it could be death by misadventure, or maybe the child has just wandered off. But they also seem to get into the investigation phase of it very quickly, and that was a successful outcome.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I think it's like case by case. But as I said, they've got to have, and I believe they do, is certain things that they look at, and if those things get ticked off, then you call the expert investigators in to help you.
Do you think with having your podcast up and running and focusing on missing persons, is that a good thing, keeping the spotlight on?
I think so, because what happens with you talk to anyone who's a family member of someone who's missing, and that's their biggest lament, that they think that the memory just fades, and it's their missing loved one is forgotten. And I think it's important to keep it in the public focus. And police will do press conferences and all that, but how many can you do? And they're busy. They've got other things to do. So, as I said, if I can keep the memory of these people alive, so to speak, and in the public spotlight, then there's more chance that someone may see it and hear it and think, what, I remember something. It might just be a tiny little piece.
I think the fact that you keep it in the spotlight, because one thing I found in working in unsolved homicide and looking at historical homicides, circumstances change too. Someone could have a piece of information, but they weren't prepared to go to the police, and then that person they had the information about might have passed away, or the circumstances change. Relationships break up. So I think unless it's out there in the public, it's unlikely to be solved.
Oh, 100%. You're exactly right. People have falling outs, or the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, if people don't know about it, how can you expect them to pick up the phone it's not even about expecting. It's about, and sometimes what I do is I say to people who have information, I mean, and I make no apology. Like, look at yourself. Look deep into your soul.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was your kid or your loved one that was missing. You may be afraid, but call police. They'll protect you. I mean, just do the right thing.
Well, that's good advice. Any concern you got for giving someone up can be overcome by the way the police deal with it, and check your conscience. True crime podcasts. I'm interested in your thoughts on there. There's a whole range of them. Do you see some benefits for it? Like I know, I'll throw up the counter argument. Police might say, "Oh, look, we don't need that attention. Let us just do our job." It's revealing methodology. On the other hand, it is, well, we don't have to listen to the police saying that anymore. The public want answers, and this is the way we're putting it across. Where do you sit with true crime podcasts?
Look, I think probably somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
I know for me, what I've always done, and before I came across to this platform, when I was doing it, just independently in that, and I was under no obligation to do this, but I did it because I know how hard police work. I would always check with police. Hey, I want to do this story. Do you guys have any issues with it?
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because, as we both know, police review cases, and I wouldn't want to do something that may interfere with a police operation, could be covert or anything. So I think it's important to have an open line of communication with police, just so you make sure that you're not interfering with anything. Things like methodology and that, I understand.
Yep.
So, I've never had an issue if police say to me, "Oh, listen, don't cover that." I have no issue with it if it's methodology or if they're doing some covert operation, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to assist. I don't want to hinder them. I don't want to make their job harder. So I think it's difficult. It depends on the type of program.
Yeah.
So I'll probably sit somewhere in the middle.
Okay, because it has the world has changed in that the public, gone are the days where you could the police could just do a stand up and say the inquiry's ongoing. We'll let you know if something happens. Like, the public now want more answers. So I think to work together. Of recent times, the police have been coming under some criticism. I think the latest and the most recent one is the tasering of the 94-year-old woman who subsequently died. It's a matter before the coroner, but there's been some criticism for obvious reasons. Do you think, because you've worked in the media, you've worked in the police, you understand the dynamics, do you think there could be a better relationship between media and police?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Even I think I've got a pretty good relationship with most police around Australia, because I've been doing this a while, and for me the most important thing is you want to build trust, and if that ever gets affected, or if there's a policeman who gets upset with something I've done or whatever, I take it personally.
Yeah.
Because having that relationship is very, very important. But even I dealing with some police, you detect a hesitancy, you detect a little bit of suspicion. Now, I don't know if that's been drilled into them, when they're at the academy or when they're doing training. The media are not, bad. So I'm not sure.
My observation on that, Meni, is normally whoever the strong character is, it might be the boss or whatever, saying, "I don't trust these journalists, don't do that." It breeds from there. Some people have different approaches. I've always seen the media as a tool that should be used in investigations, and certainly when we're talking missing persons, I can't think of a better platform to get a message out.
Yeah, look, and I think senior police understand that. Senior police. But look, it's a two-way street. I talk about respect and understanding, and I think, and I know, in the past, police have been burned. Court cases. have been destroyed because the media has
true.
well, I guess the Higgins is the most recent.
The way that one's playing out.
Yeah. So I understand with police why they tend to be a little bit hesitant, But I guess it's just up to the individual to build a relationship and make that relationship work. But I think, as I said, the majority of senior police see the benefit of the media. Yeah.
Okay. What can we expect from the series, The Missing Australia?
Number one, good storytelling, I hope.
Yep.
I mean, engaging, good storytelling. I think some of most of them, it's going to pull at the heartstrings because I'm talking to vulnerable people who are at their most raw emotionally.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate and respect that people will sit down and open up to me because that's a big deal for me, that someone shares their story.
There's a lot of trust involved.
Well, there is, and that's why I'm always respectful, and I want them to be happy, and I don't rush in. We take our time. If they need to stop, then we stop. So I think you're going to hear some real stories, and I think you're going to get a real understanding of just how horrendous it is when you have a loved one going missing. But the other side of the coin that is important to me is that I want to get out as much information about the missing person as I can, and to make an appeal to listeners who know something, to pick up the phone, because police, they never stop looking, and they're always willing to jump on and crack a case. So it's just a matter. Sometimes you need someone to make that first move and dial the number.
Yeah, and for all the amateur detectives out there too, these are active cases. These are unsolved cases. So the answer's there. We're not rehashing crimes that have been solved. These are situations that still require answers. So if you're listening, bear that in mind. I think that's important too.
Yeah, and what I try and do, but it's easy just to get on Google and get the information on a story and talk about it. What I try and do is every case I've brought up is I'm trying to progress it. So there may be a new lead that goes out, new information, a new appeal for something. So I think it's really important, and that's what I try and do with every story, is not only tell the story, but to bring something new and fresh that's unknown, that may spark someone to who knows something
come forward.
to come forward. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question I was taught a long time ago. Don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to. But what do you think of clairvoyants? Because they permeate through here, and I've been troubled by them. I'll declare that they prey on people that are looking for their loved ones. What's your take on it?
Yeah, look, I think it's like anything, Gary. I think there are good and bad. I think there are ones that are genuine, that believe they can help people, and I think there are others that are charlatans and want to rip people off. I've done cases. I actually did one only about a year ago. A young girl, 15, went missing in 1972, and a detective I worked with rang me because he befriended her twin sister, who was actually married to a police officer who was tragically killed in line of duty, so sort of part of the police family. Yeah. And the family, in desperation, had gone to see a clairvoyant, and the clairvoyant had picked an area at Penrith and said, her remains are there. Now, he rang me and he said, listen, can you organise a cadaver dog, right? So I respect what people feel, and I'm not going to tell families of missing loved ones, of missing people, what they should and shouldn't do. So I contacted a guy who worked in the police dogs for many years, and he had a dog that he trained in Melbourne. We came up and the dog went there and sat down. We got excited. We did a dig. We didn't find anything, right? Yeah. But for me, it was like, at least I assisted the family. It was one thing that they tried. It didn't work out, but they could put it behind them now. Yeah. We searched that area at least. It wasn't in their mind thinking, is she there? Is she not there?
It's interesting you say that. That's the trouble with dealing with them, because all the cases I've worked on, and the higher the profile, the more the clairvoyants come out of the woodwork where there's a missing person. And I've got to say that they've causing the victims drama, like the victims' families. And I have people phone me and say, well, this clairvoyant has got in contact with me and, this area might be there. And I understand. You've got to hang on to any degree of hope. And who are we to say, no, that's all bullshit?
Yeah.
The only thing I can say is that in all my time in homicide and all the people I've worked with across the globe in homicide, I've never found anyone that solved a case because of a clairvoyant. And in fact, I was at a symposium, and I think it was someone from Scotland Yard said that you show me a clairvoyant that knows where the body's buried, and I'll show you the person that buried the body there.
Yeah.
So, but I raise that because it's something that is synonymous with missing persons, where people have had dreams and say, "Oh, have you looked here?" I still get contacted regularly by people that provide information on that basis, and I've just basically, I need some factual context, I need something tangible, and I can't follow up on dreams.
Yeah.
But
I do too.
Yeah, and I
people
understand.
People contact me. Oh, I know this and I know that, and you know what I say to them? I say, well, tell the police. Go tell the police, and then let's let the police work out the veracity of what you're saying. But you're right. I mean, there's Gordana Kateski, who's, I think, episode 3 that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, her mother travelled to Bulgaria.
Yeah.
There was a blind psychic there. And the mother, went all the way to Bulgaria.
And like when I laugh with pity in my heart and
Yeah.
sadness, because that's how desperate the families are.
They are.
To find out what's happened.
They are.
There's I do recall one thing. I probably shouldn't name names, but I think you might have heard of Hands Are Up.
Oh, yeah.
A good fella. And there was a particular case where someone phoned up and a clairvoyant and said, I've got information about a certain case. It was fairly high profile. And Hans' response was, well, if you are a clairvoyant and you can predict the future, you'll know I'm about to hang up on you. So
Yeah.
that's a way of dealing with it. But, it's just something that it just shows how vulnerable these families are.
Yeah, and, it's horrible that there are people out there that take that vulnerability as a weakness and take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's terrible,
Yeah, well, that is terrible.
Yeah, but you can understand. I mean, as I said, families are desperate for answers.
I can understand from a family point of view, and I've done some searches just to appease the family because they could not stop obsessing about this information they've received.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that's good.
Yeah.
Like even, and I probably would have did things like that in the police where I did something knowing it wasn't going to get a result, but I did it because it was important to the victim's family, right? And that's why I did it. And I think that's a good thing to do. You know what I mean? Because if you refuse, they keep, going over and over in their mind. At least if you do it, it gives them some comfort and some peace.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. You transition from policing into journalism. How did you find that, and do you see some similarities between what you did as a police officer and what you've done in the field of journalism?
Look, the transition initially was really tough. I got a job as a reporter on a new nightly tabloid current affairs show, and there's no producer, no nothing. It was just go get stories and start writing.
Threw you in at the deep
end.
end.
So I would just get old scripts, from other reporters there, and look at them, and and then sort of picked it up. But look, what I see is similar between policing and journalism. And I say I've had 2 careers, police and journalist, right? And both of them give you the opportunity that, if you want to, that you can try and help people, that you can try and do something positive and something good for other people. So that's what I've always tried to do. And I guess the biggest thing is, I think the short time I had in the police set me up well to move into media, because you're dealing with people, and you need to get people's trust and all that stuff, and you need to be able to deal with people well. And my strength has always been that I've been able to get people to talk to me rather than anyone else. Yeah, 'cause, nightly current affairs is so competitive,
Yeah.
And I'd get most of the stories, because people could see that I was genuine, that and all that.
You just hit on the word genuine.
Yeah.
And you see it, you can smell it, you can taste it a mile away if someone comes in and they're not genuine. And you see that in policing. And, you get breakthroughs in policing because when you're talking to someone, you genuinely care.
100%.
And you get information. And that could be the bad guy.
Yeah.
But you've got to engage that communication. So.
Yeah. And you said, you've got people, cases 20 years ago. I've got stories I did 20 years ago. And I'm still in contact with the people, still have their number on my phone. Because when someone tells me a story, for me, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
That they're sitting down to share a story with me. It's not like, oh, yeah, great, I've got a story now, see you later. It's like a big deal. And so, I've always had that respect for people. And I guess the other thing is, I'm sure you found now, is the investigative, skills, whatever skills you learned in the police, looking for information, trying to uncover things. Yeah. I mean, they really help in the field of journalism.
It does help, and it helps you sift through what are the facts, what can you rely on, what weight you place on certain things. Okay, just advice, or just a question, I should say. People starting out to a career in policing or a career in journalism, what would you recommend, or would you recommend either?
Oh, look, you know what? It's a tough question because I think I still think policing is, one of the most honourable, if not the most honourable career in the world. I really do, and I still think it attracts, good people, the majority of good people, but it's changed so much. It's changed a lot, and, mobile phones now, everyone's got a camera, they can edit it any way they want, which we see often, social media, all that sort of stuff. So I think policing today is really difficult because I think they're much, under the spotlight a lot more. As far as journalism, well, I lament that, and I'm talking probably from a broadcast point of view now, because that's all where I've worked. I think people are just reporters now, and they get a press release and they don't even question; they just do a story. I think the days of journalism where they went.
In-depth.
Well, not only that, but the old type journos, they'd go to the pub where the police used to drink, introduce themselves to build up those relationships, They'd go talk to people and that. I don't think a lot of that happens now. Look, it's pretty tough. I mean, I would never tell anyone to not join the police.
Yep.
But it is a lot more difficult, I think, today.
Yeah.
And I often think, how would I go if I went back? And I don't know if I'd stick it out for too long.
Yeah, I question how I would fit into the new world as well. But I suppose with both careers, and I'm fortunate that I've managed to have a police career and trying to forge a career in journalism. At least they're interesting, aren't they? You never know what each day is going to bring.
Well, that's the best thing. I mean, you're right. You don't know from day to day what it brings, and you come into contact with people from all walks of life, and all these great stories. And they're sad, like the stories I do are sad, but I do them because I honestly, I really, really believe that we're going to get results, and that's what drives me. That we're going to get results, and we're going to bring some peace to some families. So.
Well, I've enjoyed our chat, Meni. So thanks for coming.
Me too,
on.
Gary. It's good to catch up.
Also, thanks for paving the way for an ex-cop to go into journalism too, because there's not many role models. So at least I can look to you and go, "Oh, you managed to make the transition."
Well, you're doing well, mate. So just keep it up. Good on you.
No, I'm enjoying it, and good luck with the podcast. So it's the Missing Australia. Where can people hear it, and how do they?
It's on Crime X. It's on, or just go to themissingaustralia.com.au, and that'll take you to the landing page. You can listen to it there. But it's on Spotify, it's on Apple and other platforms. So have a listen, and like I've said probably a number of times today, if you have information about any missing person, please pick up the phone and call police.
And the important thing is to remember these are unsolved cases, so it's genuine in trying to get information. And also with your book, Cop It Sweet, really it gave me an insight and a different perspective into the world of King's Cross, and I understood it, but you've humanised it. If people are interested in getting that, where can they pick?
Just go on Amazon. You can buy for a digital book, or you can buy the hard copy. So yeah.
Okay, good stuff.
Thanks,
All the
Gary.
best for the future.
Thanks, mate. Good to
Cheers.
be here. Thank you.